Hey, how are you doing? In this video, I would like to paint a space scene. Perhaps you've already seen these in the July overview post that I made. These are some thumbnail sketches that I made. I knew that I wanted to make a space scene, but I wasn't entirely sure about the layout, where I wanted it to go. I'm still not entirely sure, but I created these little thumbnails. And I tried different orientations, tried portrait layout, landscape layout, and I think the one that I like the most is this one. Somehow that one has the most appeal to me, so I will work that one out into a full painting. I won't be creating it on this canvas, I'll be making a new canvas, but first I want to select this thumbnail. I'll go to the S-shaped ribbon, the selection tool, and use the rectangle selection. And I'll just select this little sketch that I made. And I will swipe down with 3 fingers and use copy. Now I'll just go to the gallery. If my iPad listens. Yes. And I will make a new canvas, and I think I'll go for the large 4K. It's 5760 pixels by 3240 pixels. And now that we have this canvas, I can swipe down with 3 fingers again and use paste. And there we have our little thumbnail. And let's just fill the entire canvas. Yeah, like that. Now, I have also gathered some reference images, some inspirational images that I will use as a guide for inspiration. So I'll just swipe down from the bottom of the screen to open Google Drive in a secondary window. Here's some inspiration, some planets and painting that I like. You can see that I was a bit inspired by this painting with the silhouettes, and I thought it would be nice to make a couple standing there looking at the galaxy. The first thing I want to do is create a value layout. So I'll decide what parts of the painting will be dark and what areas will be lighter. So I'll go to the layer menu. Let me turn down the opacity of the sketch a bit. I'll go to 40% and I'll make a layer underneath this one. And let me just fill it with a medium gray. I'll go to value. No, I'll go to classic. That's the one I was looking for. I'll go to a medium gray and fill it. And now let's go grab a brush to block everything in. Let me go to my sketch brushes and use the block in brush. I'll be sure to attach it to the post. And let me go for a darker gray around here. Let me check the size. Well, I can go a bit bigger. I'll go for, let's say, 85%. I want the top part to be darker. And this is really a sketchy face. We also go over this planet. I want it to be just like that one over here where it's one part in darkness and one lighter part. Perhaps we'll have some mountains here on the planet on which these two characters are on. And this lower part will be pretty light. I'm just gonna go to 100% for my brush. Oh, I'm gonna go smaller because I want these characters. Let me just really sketchy. I just want to get an idea of that value layout. Now we can add some bushes just like in that painting. And that will be reflected in the water here. I'll go to 100% again. And now let me go for a lighter gray to add some lights. Like on this side of that planet, for instance. And we also have this planet here. I also want to make this water and the sky here pretty light so that these two characters will really stand out. So perhaps we'll have to tone down these rings a little bit. It's like sketching with values. I also had that idea for those falling stars. Perhaps we can go even lighter for that. For the light between the characters. Now let me switch to the chalk mixer brush. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Now we can just mix the colors a little bit. We're just using the regular brush. The mixer brush works with the brush instead of the smudge tool. And we can just soften everything a little bit. Soften the transitions. I think the dark areas, I think they can be even darker. What you could just do is go to the magic wand, to the adjustments, and then go to curves and set it to gamma. We'll just pull down this left side a little bit. And that way, if we pull up this right side, we can just bump the contrast a little bit. Like that. We'll just zoom out, check if this thumbnail is working. I feel like maybe the falling stars are a little bit too big. I'm going back to my blocking brush. Pick that dark color. Make them a little bit less prominent. Because I want the focus to be on those two characters. For our next step, I would like to add some color ideas for this painting. Let me add a layer. And let me set it to color. And now let me just grab a soft brush under the airbrushing brushes. And I want to go for, well, a bit of like this color scheme with the pinks and the purples and the blues. So let's grab something like this. Let me just first go for something purplish. I'm really just experimenting here. Go for a big brush. And I don't know what'll come out of this. It's one big experiment. Let me grab some more pinkish colors. And maybe some oranges. I like that color. It's too blue. So I want to concentrate the warm colors around our two characters, and I'll have the rest to be a bit cooler. So there we have our color layer. Let me make another layer and set this one to overlay. And again, we can add some colors. I'll grab that orange again. Maybe that's a bit too much. I don't know. And of course, we're not committing to anything yet. This is just part of the whole sketching phase of finding ideas. Let me make that brush smaller. Perhaps add some bright blues. I think that's too saturated. And I just zoom out every once in a while to get that overall feeling for the piece. Perhaps we can warm this one up a little bit. I kind of like that planet over here and the blue colors that it has. Perhaps we can give our ringed planet here, we can give it kind of like that bluish pattern as well. I think this looks nice. Now we have our base idea for our space scene. Let me group all these layers just to save the whole process for you. I'll call this one. And I'll duplicate this group before we continue. And remember, you don't need to do this. Call this 2. And now, yeah, let me just keep that sketch. Or not. Shall I keep it or not keep it? No. Nah, I think we can do it without the sketch. I'll just delete it here and make a new layer on top. And you know what? Let me make a subgroup for these layers so that we have that base separate from the other layers that we'll be making. I want to try and keep it a bit logical this time. So we will make a layer for the background, for like the sky, galaxy. We'll have a layer for the planets. Then a layer for those mountains, I think, yeah. And then a layer for that water and the characters. So we'll keep everything separate from each other. So now I'll start painting that sky. And I'll just use that, well, those colored layers as a base to pick my colors from. But I'll start painting over them. And let's see, what brush shall I use? Well, I think the soft brush will be nice. I'll pick that top color first. I'll go a bit darker. And I'll drop this color in for you. And I just want to make something of a gradient. And I'm not getting bothered by the planets going over them. That's okay. And I'll start picking up local colors here. So I can make something of a gradient in the sky. And we can even use the Gaussian blur here to soften everything a little bit on this layer. And then we can start working on the planets. And if the layer that you just created, if it's bothering you, then you can just turn it off or lower the opacity. But I feel like I can still see the planets. Planets are usually perfectly round, so I want ours to be as well. Let me just use the monoline brush under calligraphy. And let's pick this color. I'll make a planet here first. Just draw a circle and hold one finger on your screen to make it a perfect circle. And I'll just use edit shape to move it around a bit. Let me place it here. And I'll drop in the color to fill it. There's planet number 1. Now on to number 2. I don't know, let me pick this color. Let's go for something like this. Don't forget to put one finger on your screen to let it snap to a perfect circle. There. And now when you set this layer to alpha lock, you can only paint on a planet. So that's really handy, because now we can go to the airbrushing brushes and just add a bit of shadow to those planets. We're just going for something really basic right now. We can work on these planets some more later. And while alpha lock is turned on, you can also use Gaussian blur to soften those colors on the planets a bit. Alright, I want to do those rings later. I just want to move on to those mountains right now. So I'll make a new layer and let me turn off the planets for now. And I want to make something of a mountain range. And let me use the Sketchit brush, which is part of the illustration brushes, but you can also use an HB or 6B pencil. I just want to use something a bit sketchy. First I'll make some mountains here in the distance. Maybe I'll make multiple layers for these mountains. And I'll just grab some local colors. And I'll fill in these mountains by hand. And right now I really just want to make a layout of my layers, so I'm not working on any details yet. Let me also just name this Mountains 1. And I'll make Mountains 2 on top of it. So I can go in front of the other mountains here. And later, if I need to make adjustments to those first mountains, I can easily do that because they are all on separate layers. Really making something pretty sketchy here. And I'm picking up local colors to draw in these mountains. Alright, let me also rename these other layers so everything is still clear. Planets, and well, let's just name that background. I'll turn on these planets again. Let me go to the mountains again to just cover these planets a bit. And mountains too. Alright, on to that foreground. I want to make a selection first. Well, first of course we need a new layer. And now I'll make a rectangular selection for our water. Maybe, yeah, we can do these parts on separate layers as well. Let me first, of course I can't pick a color again. Or can I? Yeah, I can. Let me fill it in with this color. But of course I can't see the other colors anymore. Let's go to let's use the basic flow brush. I'm gonna pick this color, turn it back on, and set it to alpha lock. So we'll only be able to paint on this. I'm just gonna add some color. And again, we can use the Gaussian blur to blur it a bit. So now we just have a base there. And now we can make a layer below this one. Alright, so this will be the water. Let me rename it. And I'll go one layer below and make a new layer for our characters and for some of those bushes. Let me just pick a local color. I'll use the Sketch It brush again. It's under the illustration brushes. And I'll just sketch in some bushes. And of course, we want to sketch in the characters. Just roughly sketching that in. Let me check. I want to lighten the background here a bit. I went to that background layer. I want to lighten this area in between those characters a bit. Let me move to the basic flow brush. All right, we can also do the shooting stars on a separate layer above our background layer. So we can just click the plus here and make those falling stars. Let me grab that color. I'll go for a bit more blue. We can brighten them up later. This layer is the shooting stars. And then we need a layer for our rings. Let me click the plus here above our planets. This will be the rings. Let me check. Let me use the Sketch It brush again, or maybe the dry fine liner. And let's see what we can do. Creating these rings. A little bit bigger, 30%. Oh, oops. Perhaps something like this. And I was thinking that maybe I can just fill that shape then. I'll adjust the color drop threshold so that it just about fills without spilling everything there. And of course we want to get rid of that part that is covering the what's called the planet. So we'll just click this planet layer, use select, and then we'll go to the rings, grab an eraser. Let's make it nice and big. And we can just erase that part. And now we have a nice ring in front of our planet. I just feel like it could be a bit broader here, maybe. Maybe I can use the liquify tool. I need to make the brush of the liquify tool bigger. Of course, we have a part covering that planet again, so I can just use select again, go to the rings layer and remove that. Now we have a nice layout for all of our layers. Still, the painting is looking pretty shitty. It's not looking like anything right now, but we'll get there. We will start adding more details, working on the textures and building up this painting in our next step. Let me just duplicate the layers, which I am unable to because the canvas is so big. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate the entire canvas. So if you really want to take a closer look, you will have to move through separate files, unfortunately. Or perhaps I can just make it a bit smaller, but well, we'll see. I'm not sure about that. Let me just duplicate it. And then I'll just continue working on that one. I'll remove this group. And I'll call this 3. And we can just continue working on this file. Now I was thinking I don't want to lose that initial color idea. I want to be able to check that out every once in a while. So I'll duplicate that group with those colors, with that layout, and I'll move it to the top here. So that way I will be able to check that out because I really like the colors there, and yeah, I just don't want to lose that. So now I want to start working on the background. I'll just work from the back to the front. So let's go to the background layer. And I want to get some clouds in just like there, and maybe some mist. So let me just grab the basic flow brush. Of course, we also want some stars in there. Let me see, I'll make it a bit bigger. I'm around 50%. I'll make some cloudy shapes here as well. Still pretty much just experimenting. I'm just not sure where things will go. And it could also be that I'll eventually have to to take my iPad away from my lights again. So I'll be able to see those dark areas better. And also because it's super hot. We are getting tropical heat here in the Netherlands these days. You wouldn't expect it, but we get some tropical weather over here. And working on your attic is not a great idea when the temperatures rise that high. So I try to take breaks so that I don't get overheated. Maybe I should make this area around those falling stars a little bit darker, so that they'll nicely pop. And I'm so sorry that I'm not dropping in a lot of colors into the color palette, because the whole way of working is a little bit different now. And also, I would really advise you to also work on picking your own colors and not just rely on my color palettes, because it's a great practice. I will probably need to add some mist in front of that planet at a later stage. I'll just work on everything behind it right now, but eventually I'll have to add some in front there. To let it merge with the background. I'm gonna go towards a bit more of a yellowish warm color here. Let me check. Just blending a bit as I go here. I'm making circular motions here. I want to darken this area just a little bit. I feel like it might be a bit too light. I can check my colors. Maybe pick that. All right, let's add some stars to the sky and maybe just a little bit of bluish, slightly lighter clouds. I'll drop that in the color palette. I think you could also just download my working file and pick colors from that if you really want to use the same colors. But like I said, it's really a good idea to pick your own colors. Let me just pick this up slightly. Add some light. I can hardly see it with my studio lights here. All right, let me add some stars. Let me think about how I want to add those. Maybe I'll go to the luminance brushes. And let me check out the light pen. Just pick a very light blue. Yeah, I like that. It's at, well, it's around 50%. I'll just add some random lights. Or random stars. I'm using very little pressure so they become very small. Some are barely visible. And I'll push a little bit harder for some other stars to vary it up a bit. I can actually hear my daughter laughing in the garden. She has a pretty loud laugh. And I believe she's playing with some kind of tennis contraption. It's like this pole with a well, like a line on it with a ball, and you can hit it and it'll come back to you, the ball. And you can also play it together. It's quite a lot of fun. I'm gonna grab that orangey color, pinkish, for a couple of stars here. Or little lights. And let me grab a soft brush, the soft airbrush. Let me check. Yeah, I want to add a little bit of lights. I think this is already looking a lot better, that sky. All right. Now I think we can work on those planets. So I'll go to the planets layer. And first of all, what I want to do is I'll take off alpha lock and I want to blur them just slightly because I feel like that edge is just a little bit too crisp. So I'll go to the Gaussian blur and just give it a slight blur. So I think this is enough. Around 2.5 to 3%. That's nice. Okay, I'll start with that one over there. I'll turn alpha lock back on, so I won't be able to paint outside of that shape. And what I like about this one here is that you can see that edge between the shadow and the light, that's pretty saturated. I like that. And also let's add some texture to our planet. Let's just try something out. Let me try Dove Lake. I'll pick a warm color right here. I'll drop it in for you. I'm not sure if my color palette is really handy today, but okay, let me check. Alright, I'm at 28%. I'll just drop some random texture. Let me also go a bit lighter, but towards the blues. Let me check. Maybe Rusted Decay under Industrial. It's at around 11%. Let me make a nice shadow here. So it's almost entirely covered. And we can actually use the overlay brush. Let's try that. The overlay brush to add some warm colors there. I'll just go for a reddish color. Glaze that over the edge. And let me just grab the basic flow brush. Maybe I can make it just a little bit darker there. Alright, that's one planet. Let's go to the other one. I might want to make it look a bit like this one. Looks like Jupiter. Perhaps it is, just with other colors. Alright, let's first just add some base texture. So let's go to the Rusted Decay again. And I want to add some bluish. I'm just letting it follow the kind of the shape of that planet, that rounded shape. Adding some storms to this planet. Oh, that's too much. Perhaps a little bit of light down there. Just want to add some color variation to this planet. I'm just playing around with the brush size a bit. And let's use that chalk mixer brush again, because I want to blur it a little bit. And now let me go to the basic flow brush set. Where is it? Yeah. And I just want to go and use the basic flow brush to add some details to those storms. Go a bit smaller, 10% perhaps. I just want to add some of those stormy textures that you can see there. Some swirlies. Let me also grab the light and line brush. I can add some details to those storms. I'm at 9%. This is quite relaxing, actually. Yeah. Adding some texture to a planet. And it's nice because you don't have to put too much thought into it. Of course, you can experiment with texture brushes. If you have my textures pack, then you can try out those to add more interesting textures to your planet. I'm going to grab the lighten brush. I want to add a bit more light to the planet. I'm gonna go even bigger, 73%. Now I'm going to use the multiply brush to work on the shadow a bit. Let me check, it's at 20% right now. I think that's okay. Maybe a bit of a purplish bluish color. Yeah, I like that. Now we'll have to move on to the rings. Of course, we have the rings on a separate layer. And we can do the same thing that we did with the planet You Can Draw This video. I think we did the same. I'm not entirely sure anymore, actually. But what I'll do on this layer is I'll add a layer mask. And I'll fill it with black. So now our rings are gone, but I'm going to the spray paints and use, well, let me start with the flicks, set that to white, and then we'll have to make the brush bigger. Let's see, yeah. Well, I believe that's a bit too big. I'm going for the medium nozzle. I'm going over those rings. Now we got a slight texture. And I want to remove some parts of those rings. I'm going to lower the opacity of this brush. It's at 40%. I'm going to make it smaller. It's at 19. And I'll set it to black again. And I can see now that this area that's way too light, I haven't painted over it on the sky layer. So I should really do that. So I'll go back to the background layer. And let me paint a bit more there. I'll go to the basic set, use the basic flow brush. And I'll move it to 77%. It's a bit silly of me that I didn't work on that area. I should have done that before adding all those stars. Well, we all make mistakes sometimes. Yeah, it's a lot darker now already. Alright, let me go back to those rings. It's looking better now. And I'll go back to the spray paints, medium nozzle. I want to remove that sharp outer edge a bit. Then I'll switch back to white, move to 6%. And I just want to add some lighter rings. I feel like it's already looking a lot nicer and more subtle. I'll switch to black to remove this area a little bit, because that's in shadow. You won't be seeing that a whole lot. And now let me make a layer on top of it. I'll just call it rings 2. No, I don't mean rings 2, but rings 2. Rings 2. And let me keep using the medium nozzle. I just want to make some lighter rings now. Let's check. Maybe a bit smaller. And I'll just follow that shape of the rings that we already have. And make some lighter looking rings. Of course, you can also just turn around your entire canvas so that you can make strokes that feel good with your wrist or your entire arm. For me, this is easier. I might just tidy this up a bit more in the final stage. Making it a bit more tidy. But for now, I feel like it's looking okay. Now to really finish that background, I want to work on those shooting stars, or well, it's probably not shooting stars. What is it? Meteorites, meteors? I don't know. Yeah, let me just go to that layer with the shooting stars. I'll just call them shooting stars. And I want to use that one as an example. Let me go to the luminance brushes. I think we can do something nice with that. Let me grab a blue. Let me check it out. That's pretty cool. 85%. Let's go for darker blue. Yeah, that's nice. I'm gonna make a circle here. Nice, nice. And now I want that tail. We can try to combine both types of tails a bit. Let me do this on a new layer so I can change it. I'll go smaller, 28. Of course, no, I should do it on the same layer. Otherwise it will look weird. Let's go to the smudge tool and use the basic blender. And I want to get rid of this weird looking tail a bit. So I'll blend that a little bit. And now let me try the light brush. And I'll pick a purplish color. And I'll add that tail. I feel like it's standing out a little bit too much. Let me experiment with Gaussian blur. Like that, and I'll go to the smudge tool again. I feel like maybe they are a bit too bright. Let's see what happens if I lower the opacity. I think that's a little bit better. A little bit more. And I feel like that front side, it's a little bit too big. Let me see if I make them both just smaller. Perhaps warp them. I think there is nice. And now I am going to add some little glitteries. I'll just pick a blue again. Oh, that was that the blue? I don't know, let me just put it in there. Give them a little bit of a magical touch. Yeah, I like that. Now, let's move to the mountains. We have those here, mountains 1. I want to add a little bit of mist, just like in that image. I want to add that in front of the planets. So I'll make a new layer on top of rings 2. I'll just call it mist. And let's add a little bit of that in front of our planet. Let me just use the basic flow brush. It's pretty big, 72%. And I'll also just pick up some local colors. Go a bit lighter. Now this separates that whole planet a bit more from those, those other planets, of course. And now we can move to the mountains. Let me just... we can go to the charcoals. Perhaps we can use the charcoal block. So we can add some texture. Let me see. Yeah, I like that. Mountains 1. That's those. Let me switch to 5% in size. Yeah, let me check the colors that we initially had. Yeah, so some warm colors for those mountains near the characters. I want to use the darken line and the lighten line brushes to add a little bit of texture to those mountains. Not too much. I'll just pick up the local colors. I'll set the brush to 22%. I'll probably just play around with it a little bit. And I'll draw in some texture by hand. And these mountains are in the distance, so you don't need to add all kinds of small details. And those mountains over here. And with the light and line brush, I'll do the same, but then add a bit of light texture. Let me grab that light yellow. All right, now let's move to the other mountains in front. On mountains 2 layer. Let me first fill in the shapes a bit more. I didn't like the charcoal too much. I'm just gonna use the Sketch It brush. Let me check those colors. Yeah, we're still pretty close. Just make the brush a bit smaller. I want some crisp edges here. You see, I've already added some texture to that mountain using the Sketch It brush. You can add some of that dark blue on this side as well. You see, I'm really roughly adding that texture. And now let me switch to the light and line brush again to add just some lighter details. And this image, it reminds me a bit of my own dreams sometimes. Sometimes I dream of the end of the world, for example. Like that a big meteor is hitting the earth. And that, well, I dreamt once that I was witnessing those final moments of Earth. And I think in that dream, the sun probably died or something. Then I was with a couple of other people and we were just witnessing the end of our planet. And it kind of reminds me of a way of that dream. Well, I've had a couple of those dreams, or sometimes I dream that I fly up in the sky further and further away from Earth, looking down at our planet. I've always been in awe by the size of the universe. I'm not sure how to explain, but as a kid I always looked up at the stars and feeling so small, wondering what was up there. I still love looking at the stars. I just wish there wasn't that much light pollution, so I would be able to see the Milky Way from home. Well, we get some nice texture here now. Let's work on those plants. That's this layer. Well, let me just call it plants then. And let me use the Sketch It brush again. Where is it? There it is. I want to make it a bit darker. Let me check those colors. Well, it didn't make it very dark here, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I want to make it darker. And I want to give it just slightly more texture. Giving it little leaves. Just trying to mimic a leafy texture. Not adding a huge amount of detail. Keeping it a bit impressionistic. I think maybe we can make the characters just a little bit smaller. I'm going to use the selection tool, set it to freehand, and I'll just select our little characters. Make them slightly smaller. I think that's a bit better. I'll have to work on the background again though. Let's use the basic flow again. Let me just work on that a little bit. Alright, now let's work on the water, on the reflections. What we can do is we can just use the layer with the plants and the people. We can use that, duplicate it. If I can, yeah, I can. Place it on top of the water. And let's go to the arrow and use flip vertical. And then while I have it set to magnetics, I'll drag it down. To about here. And now that I'm thinking of it, this is not smart. I should work on the characters a bit more first. Let's rewind. Let's go back to the plants layer. I want to refine these two people. First I'll use the eraser, make it a lot smaller. Alright, and back to the Sketch It brush. I'm at 5%. I'll go even smaller, 3%. I'll use the eraser with the chalk pencil as well. I feel like the head is a bit big. Now I might need to refine this a little bit more later. But for now I think it's good enough for the reflection. So now I can really duplicate it, put it on top of the water, and now I'll just flip it vertical and drag it down. And yeah, I can keep it like this. I'll go over it. I want to add a little bit more plants. Of course, let me lower the opacity. Quite a bit. I'll cover those areas a little bit where you can see some gaps. Now, because of the angle of the water, you'd probably not see that, what's it called? Yeah, the planet. You probably won't see a reflection of that. You'd probably see some cloud-like shapes. Let me go to the basic flow brush and let me merge these. So we just have one water layer. You'd probably see some of those clouds reflected. You'll see some light. That light between the characters. And some of that lighter blue. Just a very impressionistic reflection. You can also add some of those. Well, let's do that later. We can add some lights later. Let me first go to the multiply brush. Make it a bit bigger, around 30%. I'll darken those edges a bit. And we could also blur this layer just slightly. Using the Gaussian blur. Just a little blur. I like where this has gone. I think it's wise if I go away from my lights now before I overheat anyway. And just to check it out without the lamps hitting it. I want to refine the rings a bit more, for example. Just tweak some things, maybe experiment a bit. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing this. Alright, so I switched to, screen capturing. So I could work on the rings a bit more, for example. I wanted to add a little bit more detail there. And first I tried the fine liner, which is part of the illustration brush set. But it doesn't really matter what kind of brush you use here, as long as it's fine. And a liner, no, but really, you could also just use like one of the pencils that are already in Procreate. I tried to make something clean, pretty clean looking here, but I have a bit of a wobbly hand sometimes, so it was hard creating these rings. Decided to flip my canvas to work on this. And I have to sit in my attic while recording this. I'm just watching the replay, the screen capture, while I try to talk you through it. But whoa, it's just so unbelievably hot up here. It's we've been having tropical temperatures here in the Netherlands these last few days, and yeah, I guess we're not really used to it. I don't have air conditioning, for example. I have some ventilators, but of course I can't turn that on when I'm recording any sound. So right now the temperature is rising pretty fast here. I think I'll be soaked once I'm finished with this recording. I'm just making these rings. adding some more lines. I decided to try and use a glitter brush for these rings. I thought that it would be nice to add some sparkle here. And I will add the glitter brush, or well, the glitter brushes that I'll be using here, I'll add them to the post so you can use them as well for your own space scene. But I thought they were giving a nice effect. I really like the nice glittery effect that this brush is giving to these rings. I thought it was quite satisfying adding these to the painting. I grabbed the multiply brush to darken up the background layer a little bit, especially around the outsides, like the top of the galaxy. I wanted to darken that a little bit. Now I went to the planets layer and I've darkened that planet a bit as well. Also with the multiply brush. Now I've grabbed the overlay brush and I'm using it to tweak the colors of this ringed planet a bit. Using a purplish color, and it's just a tiny tweak. Now I'm back to the background layer with the basic flow brush. I want to clean this up, this area around those shooting stars. I thought it was a bit messy. I'm just tweaking the cloud parts a bit here. I want to get rid of all those bushes behind the characters, but I guess those are on a separate layer, so I wasn't able to paint over those right now. I'm gonna grab another glitter brush to add some glitter to the shooting stars. At first I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to use. It was kind of an experiment. But I'll add the one that worked best. I'll add that to the post. But if you already have the glitter brush set, then of course you can experiment with those yourself as well. I thought the sparkly streak wasn't a real success. At least not for these shooting stars. Now, I believe I was trying to figure out where I could find that, those bushes right here, and I found them. So I removed them with the eraser. It was a reflection on the water. Well, part of that reflection, it was sticking out at the top. Now I grabbed the fine liner again and I wanted to just add some finer details to these bushes, like small leaves, not too detailed, but making them look a bit more refined. I believe I was looking for a foliage brush here, but I couldn't find it right away. But I believe it was part of the forest brush set. And I also gave it as a special monthly brush. And I thought it was a textured foliage, but not really sure. I painted over these bushes with it just to add a little bit of texture. Now I went back to the fine liner brush to start drawing, well, by hand again. I wanted to refine these persons, these silhouettes a bit more. And I wanted to darken them just a little bit. And I'm using the eraser to carve them out at some points, just a little bit. Now I made a new layer on top of the plants and used layer clipping mask because I wanted to experiment with some light on these bushes. So I'm using the soft brush and a light color from the sky. And I wanted to add a bit of a glow to these people and to these plants. But well, I wasn't quite sure what color I wanted and what layer blending mode. I tried color dodge, and I'm just switching between blending modes to see what effect works best. Well, I surely didn't quite like this, so I went to the eraser and, well, with a soft eraser, tried to erase almost everything here, and I just wanted some light on these edges of the plants. And at this stage, I'm really just tweaking things in the painting, trying different stuff. Using some overlay here. Warming that up. I wanted to add some like glitter to the water, and I decided to use the big bokeh lights to go over that area. Well, of course I needed to make a new layer to make that work, and I set it to color dodge here. And of course I needed that layer to be on top of the water to make it work. I'm just adding some of this nice glow. Playing around with the color a bit. And here I'm working on that mist a little bit. That mist that's in front of that ringed planet. Just refining that a little bit, making it more wispy. And like I said, this is just the final tweaks, and you can keep tweaking for as long as you like. Until you're tired of your painting. Or until you are very happy with your result and feel like it's finished. But I never really feel like a painting is finished. There are always things that you can tweak or improve. Especially when you take a look at it after like a week or after a year, then especially. But it's also a great way to see how you grow over time. Here's another overlay layer. Grabbing the soft brush again. And the layers on top of the other, so now I can just tweak the colors a bit. Trying to match them a little bit more with that color ID I had in the first place. So I'm adding warm colors to the center and adding this dark blue to the outside. I like this. I wanted to merge all the layers so I could play around with colors a bit more. So right here, I'm just trying to decrease my amount of layers so that I could duplicate the group and then merge it. So I'm just merging stuff that's mergeable until I can duplicate the group. There. Made it work. Now I can merge all the layers, and once everything is on one layer, you can easily go to the magic wand and use adjustments to tweak your contrast, tweak your colors, add some noise. I'm using the curves here again. Add gamma to boost the contrast a bit. And it's also just fun to experiment with this a little bit in the end stage of your painting, or even halfway if you just want to experiment with the colors and the contrast. Then this is a good way. Just be sure to duplicate your layer or layers, merge them, and then use this tool. Just be sure that you have a backup. And here's the color balance. You can switch between shadows, midtones, and highlights, and adjust the colors in those areas. And sometimes you can get happy surprises or come to new ideas. Now, finally, I wanted to add a little bit of noise, and just a slight amount of noise can add to the realistic feel of your painting. I like that result. Well, I guess we can call this painting finished. I hope you have enjoyed following the entire process of this painting, and I hope you'll have fun creating your own space landscape. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon here at Patreon. Have a great day.